Imagine you've booked the perfect vacation to Los Angeles, ready to enjoy the sunny beaches and vibrant city life. But just as your plane is about to land, you look out the window and instead of the iconic urban sprawl, you see water stretching for miles. It's not the ocean, it's a vast, newly formed lake swallowing up the land. Sounds unbelievable, right? Well, this isn't science fiction. It's a reality California may soon face, as a long-lost lake is on the verge of reappearing after more than a century of being dry. But why did this lake disappear? And how will he reappear? Stay until the end of the video to find out. The lake in question is Tulare Lake, once the largest freshwater lake west of the Mississippi River. In the late 19th century, this massive lake stretched over 800 square miles, a size rivaling some of the largest bodies of water in North America. Located in California's Central Valley, the lake was fed by runoff from the nearby Sierra Nevada mountains. For thousands of years, Tulare Lake was a thriving ecosystem, supporting vast wetlands, wildlife, and the indigenous people who lived off its bounty. But by the late 1800s, Tulare Lake vanished, leaving behind fertile farmland that became one of the most productive agricultural regions in the world. The transformation from lake to farmland wasn't accidental. It was engineered by settlers and farmers, eager to use the lake's water for irrigation. As California's agricultural industry boomed, canals, levees, and dams were built to divert water away from Tulare Lake and onto the crops that now dominate the region. The lake bed, which had been home to diverse ecosystems, was drained dry. By 1895, Tulare Lake was all but gone, and it stayed that way for over a century. But in 2023, something unexpected started to happen. After years of drought, California experienced an unusually wet winter, with record-breaking rainfall and heavy snowmelt in the Sierra Nevada. As the snowpack melted, water began to flow back into the basin where Tulare Lake once stood, overwhelming the levees and flood control systems that had kept the lake at bay for so long. Farmers and residents in the Central Valley found themselves scrambling to manage the rising water levels, but it soon became clear that Tulare Lake was making a comeback. So, how did we get here? To understand the reemergence of Tulare Lake, we need to delve into the history of how it disappeared in the first place. For thousands of years, the lake ebbed and flowed with the seasons, expanding during wet years and shrinking during dry ones. The indigenous people of the region lived in harmony with this natural cycle, relying on the lake's fish, waterfowl, and fertile floodplains to sustain their communities. However, with the arrival of European settlers in the 19th century, the balance between nature and human activity began to shift dramatically. As the Central Valley became one of the most sought-after agricultural regions in the U.S., farmers and engineers set out to control the water supply. The construction of irrigation systems, including dams and canals, diverted the rivers that fed Tulare Lake, turning its bed into some of the richest farmland in the country. While this transformation brought enormous economic benefits, it also came at a significant environmental cost. By the early 20th century, nearly 95% of the wetlands in California's Central Valley had disappeared, replaced by crops like cotton, tomatoes, and almonds. The drying of Tulare Lake was hailed as a triumph of human ingenuity over nature, but the long-term consequences were largely ignored. The region's reliance on intensive irrigation began to strain the local water supply, leading to issues like land subsidence, where overpumping of groundwater caused the ground to sink. As water was extracted from deep underground aquifers, the land above began to compact, making it increasingly difficult to store water in the future. Fast forward to 2023, and California's Central Valley is facing the perfect storm. After a decade of severe drought, the state's water infrastructure is being pushed to its limits by an unprecedented amount of rain and snowmelt. The same systems that once drained Tulare Lake are now struggling to manage the influx of water. levees that have held for decades are beginning to fail, flooding farmland and threatening homes, towns, and vital infrastructure. The return of Tulare Lake is not just a freak occurrence. It's the result of a series of environmental and human-made factors converging in ways that we didn't fully anticipate. But why is Tulare Lake's reappearance such a big deal? First, the sheer volume of water flowing back into the basin is staggering. As of early 2023, the amount of water already filling Tulare Lake exceeds that of nearly all of California's reservoirs combined. This has caused widespread flooding, particularly in Kings County, where much of the old lake bed is now prime farmland. Thousands of acres of crops have already been lost, and the economic damage could be in the billions of dollars. Farmers are scrambling to protect what they can, but many fear that the rising waters will soon make large parts of the Central Valley unusable for agriculture. Moreover, the return of Tulare Lake has profound implications for the people living in its path. Many of the farm workers in the area are undocumented immigrants, meaning they have limited access to government assistance and disaster relief. The flooding has already displaced hundreds of families, and more evacuations are likely as the water continues to rise. For these communities, the re-emergence of the lake is not just a natural disaster, it's a humanitarian crisis. On top of that, the environmental consequences of Tulare Lake's return are complex and far-reaching. While the lake was once a biodiverse habitat, its modern reincarnation is unlikely to bring back the same ecosystems that existed before it was drained. The Central Valley's wetlands are long gone, and much of the land that is now underwater has been heavily altered by agriculture. The soils are packed with fertilizers, pesticides, and other chemicals that could leach into the water, creating a toxic environment for both wildlife and people. And then there's the issue of what comes next. Experts predict that the flooding in Tulare Lake's basin could last for years, as the Sierra Nevada snowpack continues to melt and refill the lake. Even if the immediate floodwaters recede, the region will likely face long-term challenges in managing its water resources. The Central Valley's reliance on groundwater has already caused irreversible damage to the aquifers that once supplied the area with fresh water. Without a sustainable plan for water use, the region risks further environmental degradation, including more severe floods and droughts in the future. In a way, Tulare Lake's reappearance serves as a stark reminder of the delicate balance between human activity and the natural world. For over a century, we thought we had tamed this once mighty lake, transforming it into a breadbasket for the nation. But as climate change intensifies and weather patterns become more unpredictable, we're starting to see the limits of our control. The return of Tulare Lake is a wake-up call, a reminder that nature, no matter how hard we try to contain it, will always have the final say. So, what can we learn from this unfolding disaster? First, we need to rethink our relationship with water in the Central Valley and beyond. The current system of diverting rivers and overpumping groundwater is not sustainable, especially as the impacts of climate change become more severe. We need to invest in smarter water management practices, such as restoring wetlands, improving irrigation efficiency, and finding ways to capture and store water during wet years so that we're better prepared for the inevitable dry spells. Second, we need to recognize the human cost of environmental mismanagement. The communities living in the path of Tulare Lake are among the most vulnerable in California, and they are the ones who will bear the brunt of this disaster. It's essential that we provide them with the support they need, not just in the immediate aftermath of the floods, but in the long term as they rebuild their homes and livelihoods. In the end, the story of Tulare Lake is not just about a disappearing and reappearing lake. It's about the choices we make as a society and the consequences of those choices. As Tulare Lake rises once again, we are reminded that our actions have a lasting impact on the planet, and that the natural world, no matter how much we alter it, will always find a way to push back. And do you believe that Tulare Lake can really reappear? Let me know with a comment below. And if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more future content.